You're standing in a room made of gold, not decorated with it, made of it. The walls shimmer with ingots stacked like bricks. Chests overflow with coins that took 5 centuries to accumulate. And you realize with a clarity that empties your lungs that you chose this metal over your children's lives. The men beside you aren't here to admire the wealth. They're here to watch your face when you finally understand what you've done. Outside, your city is collapsing into ash. Inside this vault, something worse than fire is waiting for you. Before we step into what happened next, I have to pause because I'd love to know where you're watching this from. It genuinely amazes me that a story buried in 13th century dust can reach someone in São Paulo, Lagos, or Seoul today. Drop your city in the comments. Now, let's go back. February 1258, Baghdad. The man in that treasury is Al-Musta Zim, the 37th Caliph of the Abbasid dynasty, spiritual successor to the Prophet Muhammad himself, commander of the faithful across 3 continents. In 72 hours he will be dead, but the method of his death and what happens to his family will rewrite the rules of power across the Islamic world. Because the men who destroyed his city don't just kill. They architect consequences. They design deaths so specific, so symbolically devastating, that they only need to perform them once. What they did to Baghdad's royal family wasn't execution. It was a message written in blood and silence, a blueprint that would haunt every throne from Damascus to Delhi for the next 2 centuries. And it started not with violence, but with a letter that arrived on a Thursday afternoon 9 months earlier. September 1257. 3 Mongol riders approach Baghdad's gates. They carry no weapons, just a single rolled parchment sealed with Hulagu Khan's mark. The message inside is brief. You have heard what happened to Nishaber, to Merv, to Herat. You know the cost of refusal. Open your gates. Dismantle your fortifications. Send your sons as hostages. Do this and your city will be spared. Refuse and you will learn what the others learned. The letter reaches Al-Musta'sim's court by evening. By the next morning, the debate has fractured his advisors into 3 camps. His vizier Ibn al-Alqami lays out the evidence with the precision of a man who studied every Mongol campaign for the past decade. The Khwarezmian Empire fielded 400,000 soldiers, he says quietly. They had mountain fortresses, supply lines that stretched to the Caspian. All of it gone. Nishaber's walls were 30 feet thick. The Mongols needed 6 days to breach them. Then they spent 2 weeks erasing the population so thoroughly that historians still can't agree on the death toll. These aren't raiders. This is a system that has refined itself across 50 years of continuous warfare. We cannot fight them. We can only survive them. He recommends immediate submission, full tribute, open gates, hostages delivered within the week. The head of Baghdad's army disagrees. He stands, gestures toward the window overlooking walls that have protected this city for 500 years. The Mongols are steppe cavalry. They excel on open plains. They've never faced fortifications like ours, defended by a garrison that knows every street, every canal, every choke point. And they're 1,000 miles from their supply base. Winter is coming. They can't sustain a siege in hostile territory. A 3rd faction invokes theology. Baghdad isn't just a city, it's the axis of Islamic civilization. The House of Wisdom holds manuscripts that catalog humanity's accumulated knowledge. The Caliph's bloodline traces back through 37 generations to the Prophet's own family. God would not permit pagans to destroy this. Faith, they argue, is the ultimate fortification. Al-Mustazim listens. He's 54 years old, a man more comfortable with poetry than military strategy, who inherited a title that once commanded armies from Spain to Central Asia, but now barely controls the territory within sight of his palace walls. Contemporary sources describe him as fond of luxury, devoted to scholarship, uncomfortable with confrontation. He looks at the letter, he looks at his advisors, and he makes his choice. We are the Caliphate, he says. We do not submit to threats from horsemen. He orders the envoys dismissed. No tribute, no preparation, no acknowledgement that the warning was anything more than posturing from barbarians who didn't understand the weight of the institution they were challenging. Ibn al-Alqami tries one more time. If we refuse, he says slowly, they will come. Then let them come. The envoys leave Baghdad on September 24th. They carry no response, just confirmation that the Caliph has chosen defiance. What's remarkable isn't the refusal, it's what doesn't happen next. Al-Mustazim doesn't mobilize reserves, doesn't reinforce the walls, doesn't open the treasury to hire mercenaries or stockpile supplies. He continues his routine as if the threat will dissolve through inaction, as if the weight of his title alone will bend reality. Meanwhile, 300 miles to the east, Hulag's army begins moving. November 11th. Mongol scouts appear 30 miles east of Baghdad. Small force, maybe 5,000 horsemen. No siege equipment visible. Baghdad's military commander sees opportunity. If the Mongol vanguard is isolated, they can destroy it in open terrain. A decisive victory would prove Baghdad's strength and discourage further advance. On November 13th, Baghdad's field army marches out. 20,000 men, 12,000 cavalry, 8,000 infantry. It's the largest force the Caliphate has assembled in decades. They carry 3 days of supplies. The plan is simple: intercept, engage, destroy, return victorious. November 15th. The armies meet in open ground northeast of the city. Baghdad's cavalry charges. The Mongol line retreats, not in panic, but in perfect formation. They fall back 1 mile, 2 miles, still organized. Baghdad's cavalry pursues, sensing victory. Then the flanks appear. Mongol units that had been hidden in gullies to the north and south emerge simultaneously. Baghdad's cavalry finds itself surrounded, not by 5,000 horsemen, but by 15,000. What follows isn't a battle, it's dismantling. Mongol archers fire composite bows that punch through armor at 200 yards while riding at full gallop. Officers shout orders that drown in chaos. By nightfall, it's over. Of the 20,000 men who marched out, fewer than 3,000 return. Baghdad's field army, the only force capable of meeting the Mongols in open combat, no longer exists. The survivors stagger back through the gates with reports that reframe everything. This wasn't a raiding party, it was a trap. The Mongols had used a small detachment to draw Baghdad's strength into the open and eliminate it with surgical precision. By December, the main Mongol force is visible on the horizon, and Baghdad's walls are all that remain. January 11th, 1258. The Mongol army completes its encirclement. Hulagi commands an estimated 150,000 soldiers. They don't just surround the city, they build infrastructure. Fortified camps at every gate, guard rotations. Supply lines stretching back to Persia. Escape becomes impossible. Then they begin assembling siege engines. not hidden but in full view of the walls. Chinese engineers work alongside Mongol soldiers, constructing trebuchets with geometric precision. Baghdad's defenders watch the construction day after day. They can see exactly what's being prepared. They can calculate exactly what it will do to 500-year-old stonework. January 17th. Another embassy. The terms have changed. The time for full submission has passed. But the Caliph may still preserve his life. Open the gates, present yourself. Order your garrison to disarm. Do this within 3 days, and the population will be spared. Al-Musta convenes his remaining advisors. The debate has lost its energy. Ibn al-Alqami repeats his recommendation. Accept. We have no field army, no allies coming. No way to withstand what's outside our walls. The religious scholars still invoke divine protection, but their voices are quieter now. 3 days pass. No response is sent. January 29th at dawn, the trebuchets begin firing. Not randomly, systematically. The engineers have spent 2 weeks calculating wall thickness, structural weak points, optimal impact angles. The stones strike the same sections repeatedly. Each impact creates microfractures in masonry that has stood since the 8th century. The bombardment continues for 8 hours, then stops. The Mongols wait. Overnight, the damaged sections weaken further. February 1st, the bombardment resumes. By afternoon, cracks are visible from inside the city. By evening, the eastern wall begins crumbling. February 5th, a section 90 feet wide simply disintegrates. Mongol infantry moves toward the breach, not charging, walking in formation. They enter Baghdad in units, secure the breach, establish a perimeter, advance block by block. Baghdad's remaining garrison tries to hold. They're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, outfought. By nightfall, the Mongols control the eastern quarter. February 10th, the Caliph sends an envoy. I will surrender personally. I will open the gates. I will order my garrison to disarm, spare the city. Hulag's response arrives within hours. Present yourself at my camp tomorrow. Alone. February 13th, 1258. Al-Musta walks out of Baghdad. He doesn't go alone. He brings 3,000 members of the court. His sons, his ministers, his scholars, his generals. They walk through the gate unarmed. Mongol guards flank them immediately. Not threatening, just present. The procession moves through the Mongol camp in silence. Soldiers watch without expression. Hulagu receives the Caliph in his command tent. His first question is practical. Where is your treasury? The Caliph hesitates. We are prepared to offer tribute. Where is it? Al-Musta provides directions. Hulagu sends soldiers to verify. They return 3 hours later. The vault is open. What they find: gold ingots by the thousands, silver coins in countless chests, jewels accumulated over generations, silk enough to clothe an army. Hulagu orders everything documented. Then he orders the Caliph brought there. Al-Musta is escorted back into Baghdad, through streets now controlled by Mongol soldiers, past buildings beginning to smolder, to his own treasury. The doors stand open. Dadji walks in through it, room by room, vault by vault. They don't speak, but the question hangs in the air like smoke. Why was this wealth sitting here while your walls crumbled? Why were these coins in storage while your soldiers went unpaid? Why was this gold locked away while your city prepared for nothing? What happens next appears in multiple sources, though details vary. The Persian historian Rashid al-Din records that Hulagu ordered the caliph to eat his gold, to consume the wealth he'd valued more than his people's survival. Whether this literally occurred is debated. What's documented with consistency is what follows. The Mongols followed Tengrist spiritual beliefs. One of their core taboos, royal blood must not touch the ground. Spilling it directly brings cosmic imbalance. So when executing nobility, alternatives are required. For the caliph, they choose a specific method. He is wrapped in a carpet tightly, completely, arms bound, legs immobilized. Then laid on the ground outside the treasury. Horses are brought forward. The horses don't trample randomly. They are led slowly, deliberately across the wrapped figure. Repeatedly, the weight crushes the body inside the carpet. No blade is drawn. No executioner announces judgment. No formal proclamation is made. When it ends, the caliph is dead. No blood has touched the earth. The taboo is satisfied. But something else has been created, a method that will be discussed in every court from Anatolia to Delhi for the next 2 centuries. A death that carries meaning beyond mere execution. The caliph's sons are separated from the court group. All of them. Contemporary sources report they are executed the same day. Some accounts say they are also wrapped and crushed. Others suggest they are killed out of sight. What doesn't vary? All die. No heirs survive. The Abbasid dynasty, 500 years of continuous rule, ends that day. No succession occurs. No heir escapes. No continuation is possible. The family line that traced back through 37 generations to the Prophet Muhammad's uncle is severed. The caliph's daughters are taken from the group. Their exact fate is recorded vaguely. Some sources mention them being distributed among Mongol officers. Others say they are sent east to Mongol territories. After February 13th, they disappear from detailed historical record. What remains is silence, a silence more devastating than documented violence, because it erases them not just from life, but from memory. The 3,000 who walked out with the caliph ministers, scholars, generals, are divided. Those with useful skills are identified and removed. Engineers, spared, set to Mongol service. Physicians, spared. Administrators who know local governance, spared. The rest are executed outside the city. The news begins spreading before the bodies are cold. After the caliph's death, Hulagu gives Baghdad to his soldiers. For 13 days, the Mongol army divides the city into sectors. Each unit is assigned specific districts. They move systematically, building by building, street by street. Anyone with demonstrable skills is separated. Artisans who work with metal, wood, or stone. Scholars who can read and write. Merchants who know trade routes. They are marked and removed to camps outside the city. Valuables are collected and catalogued. Everyone remaining is moved outside the walls. What happens next is described in sources from multiple perspectives. The elimination is methodical. Estimates of the death toll vary wildly. Contemporary sources claim anywhere from 200,000 to 1 million dead. Modern historians suggest the actual number was likely between 90,000 and 200,000. What's verified is the aftermath. The House of Wisdom burns. Manuscripts are thrown into the Tigris River. So many books that the river reportedly runs black with ink. The Grand Mosque is partially demolished. The Caliph's palace is razed. The canal system is deliberately damaged to ensure Baghdad can't quickly recover. February 20th, Hulagu orders his army to withdraw. They leave behind a city with entire neighborhoods erased, infrastructure damaged beyond immediate repair, a population reduced by half at minimum. But they also leave survivors, specifically survivors who can tell others what they've seen, because the Mongols don't want Baghdad erased from memory. They want it remembered. Within weeks, the story reaches Damascus. Within months, it reaches Cairo. Within a year, every court from Anatolia to India knows exactly what happened. Not just that Baghdad fell, but how, and what happened to the man who thought his title made him untouchable. After February 1258, something changes across the Islamic world. Cities that had been preparing resistance suddenly reverse course. Damascus opens its gates before the Mongols arrive. Aleppo sends tribute and hostages preemptively. Smaller emirates throughout Syria and Iraq submit without seeing a single Mongol soldier, because Baghdad hadn't just been destroyed. It had been demonstrated. Rulers across the region perform the same calculation. Resist. Face a siege you cannot win. Watch your city burn, die wrapped in a carpet while your family is erased. Submit. Retain your position. Pay tribute. Survive. The equation is clear. The Mongol expansion finally stops in 1260 at the Battle of Ain Jalut. The Mamluks, military state based in Egypt, defeat a Mongol army in open combat. But even the Mamluks learned from Baghdad. They didn't rely on walls. They didn't trust in sacred authority. They built their entire society around one purpose: creating a military force capable of stopping the Mongols in the field. They studied the Mongol system. They adapted elements of it. They prepared specifically for that confrontation, because they understood what Baghdad hadn't. The Mongols weren't raiders you could wait out. They were a system you had to match. Baghdad survived as a city. People returned. Markets reopened. Trade resumed. But it never recovered its position. The center of Islamic civilization moved elsewhere. The house of wisdom was never rebuilt. The collected knowledge was never reassembled. The scholars who died were never replaced. But something else persisted: the memory of what Defiance cost. Long after Hulag's death, long after the Mongol Empire fragmented, long after the steppes fell silent, the shape of Baghdad's fall remained, preserved in chronicles that circulated across continents, repeated in courts whenever advisors debated resistance, calculated in every throne room that considered defying a superior force. There's a letter that survives in a Syrian archive from 1262, 4 years after Baghdad's fall. A minor emir writing to his brother, debating whether to resist Mongol demands. The letter ends with a single line: "I have seen what happened to the man wrapped in carpet. I will not let my sons become that memory." That's what the Mongols created. Not just a military victory, not just a conquered city, but a reference point, a case study in consequence that outlived the empire that created it. Because what happened to Al-Mustasim and his family wasn't random cruelty. It was designed. A death method that satisfied spiritual taboos while maximizing symbolic horror. A family erasure so complete that it redefined what rulers feared most: not their own deaths, but the annihilation of their lineage, the ending of their name. Titles don't negotiate with tactics. Tradition doesn't stop siege engines. Sacred authority doesn't deflect arrows. When systems collide, the one that adapts survives. The one that doesn't becomes a story told in the dark to remind kings that their crowns are made of metal, not magic. And some stories once written in blood and carpet and the silence where a royal family used to be, never need to be written again.